Well, hi, Lee. Welcome to our call today.
Hi, Nomali. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Trying to manage time.
Excellent. Today we'll be speaking about one of the topics that Nomali and I often run into when we're coaching clients, because oftentimes, of course, clients want to achieve goals. And one of the important facets of achieving goals is managing time effectively. So we'll be speaking about time management, and we'll be using the quadrants of integral theory to create a context to say something useful and practical about time management that perhaps you can also use.
Yeah, I think that I've been coaching since 2008 or 9, and then if I think about some of the top topics that come up, top challenges that come up, I would probably say it's almost always around managing time. Everyone is so busy and everyone is stressed out, and work-life balance, for example. How do we most effectively use our time? And it's so limited. There is a real sort of a directionality, relatively speaking, when it comes to time. I mean, it's really true. What's gone, you just absolutely cannot gain back when it comes to time. So I always find it interesting, the sort of the complexity of time management. It's not just as simple as, yeah, just, set a timer or make a plan and stick to it. It's just never as easy. And I think that's where the integral map, and especially the four quadrants, but also the stages and the lines of development, the different intelligences, our type, and what state of being we're in, all of it plays a role. And I think that's why when we look at these topics from an integral perspective, we can honor the complexity of our challenges that we have in our lives. We're not all built the same way, and we encounter life differently. And so anything that we can think about, such as time management or stress management, or how we sleep, how we use social media, how we relate to other people, all of it can be complex and beautiful in its complexity. So that's why I think both Lee and I, we felt that maybe let's explore this. And this is the first time that we're doing this kind of a conversation around how to look at certain challenges in our lives and look at them through the integral map. Yeah.
Well, excellent, Amalia. And indeed, if we look at the quadrants, then of course there are many different ways to plot various aspects of time management across the quadrants, and all perspectives that we can introduce have a certain value. And for today, you and I have chosen to highlight a number of factors that we feel can help people to effectively manage time. So if we look at the quadrants, then looking at the upper left quadrant, so the quadrant of individual interior, of personality and self, we've highlighted purpose as important in that quadrant, and we'll speak a little bit more about that in a bit. In the upper right quadrant of the individual exterior, so body and behavior, we've identified action as the most important topic for that quadrant. In the lower left quadrant of the collective interior, so the we dimension of relationships and culture, we've identified support. And in the lower right quadrant of the collective exterior, so the society and environment, we've identified creating conditions to be able to take effective action.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that really captures the four quadrants in a beautiful way around managing time. So perhaps maybe I'll start with the upper right. In some ways, I think this is what is hardest for me. Based on my sort of personality, I tend to kind of hang around in the upper left a lot, in the sort of the internal world. And then it's really hard sometimes to jump into action because I'm waiting in a way for me to feel right in order to work right or to act right. So in the upper right, We really want to kind of take a little bit of a moment and set some realistic goals for ourselves. Um, I had a client with whom I was working. This client was really getting overwhelmed. I mean, kind of comes into calls just feeling really exhausted and overwhelmed and stressed out. And one day I actually had him, let's just actually open your calendar. Let's actually look at your calendar together. What I was wondering, what I was suspecting was that perhaps he was sort of blowing things a little bit out of proportion, and that we can actually pause for a moment and take a little bit more of a realistic, more measured look at what's actually in front of us. So what's actually in my world, in this external domain, what I see. So I had him really look at his calendar, and we kind of went one by one. We noted what meetings that happen on what days of the week. And, lo and behold, when you actually take a measured look at what's in front of you, he actually found plenty of little blocks on his calendar. And then, you can really set goals for each of these blocks, and you actually block it out on your calendar so that nobody else can book meetings there. And it reminds you that this is my time. This is for me, and I'm not going to negotiate other, unless it's, of course, emergencies happen in all of our lives. But I think that we can really set a goal for ourselves around these are the top 3 things that I will do, and I have blocked time for that, and this is my time. And so you can really prioritize your week. And some people do this for like the whole month. And on the grander scheme of things like if you're planning a vacation or something, most of us do this sometimes months or years ahead as well. So that comes up for me as sort of taking a realistic look, and to really be objective, and to notice when we are being dragged down by the upper left, where we feel the emotions and the weight of our responsibilities, and where we feel the overwhelm. So we can sort of create a little bit of a wall between the two. And so realize that I can honor my emotions around what's going on. But for now, let me be really objective about what needs to happen. So let me take an objective look without the drama of the emotional world for now. Yeah, let me just pause there for a moment. Maybe you can add to that upper right quadrant.
Well, certainly. So I think you start with something very profound, and that is the sometimes experienced discrepancy between the upper left experience of stress, for instance, and of a shortage of time, and the objective perception of having 24 hours in every day. And almost always people are able to find a couple of minutes per day to brush their teeth. And similarly, people can also find a couple of minutes every day to do something to work towards a goal that's important to them. And then if we look at the upper quadrants, then we can say that why we put purpose in the upper left is because every goal that you're trying to achieve, and for which you're using time management so that you can set aside time to achieve that goal, has a certain purpose to it. So you want to achieve a goal because it's important to you, because it makes your life more meaningful, or because it has some very real health benefits, etc. So maintaining connection with the purpose that you experience around that goal can also help you to transcend potential feelings that are preventing you from taking effective action. And then indeed you can say in the upper right, okay, so how can I translate the purpose that I experience around the goals that I want to achieve, turn that into a realistic goal. So for instance, say that in the case of your client, perhaps one of the goals might have been stress regulation, so to create a healthier work-life balance. And then to see, okay, what's realistic, and perhaps indeed start with 1 minute or 5 minutes every day of doing something to calm the nervous system down. So for instance, doing breathing exercises or relaxation exercises. So setting realistic goals and then indeed planning them in your schedule, and then executing them, of course, in the upper right. So that's a way in which we can add a little bit more information to the way that we're looking at this time management phenomenon across the quadrants.
Yeah, yeah. And when we talk about execution, we'll next go towards the lower right, and we'll have more to say around execution, I think. But kind of just sticking around a little bit longer in the upper right, this is also very much the domain of our physicality, our physical body, and our behaviors around here. So this is where we can really make an intention to take care of our bodies well, because if our body is falling apart, we really just can't attend to anything. So exertion and rest. So there are times where you can really focus on even kind of falling into some kind of a flow state and just go, 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 go. Give yourself a challenge, find the resources that you need, and put your skills into action. And you create a time, like in the next 2 hours, I'm just completely dedicated to this. I'm going to block off all the notifications and not going to look at, shut off email or anything. And I just sort of exert and actually just commit to that. And then we take a rest. We actually give our bodies a really good rest. Go for a little walk, go for a run, do a little yoga, or put some loud music and dance and get that energy out. So that's one way that I think sometimes I just take 2 minutes to just like run up and down the stairway. And I can also maybe look at that as the exertion also, just heighten the energy in the body so that you can come back and then get into a kind of a flow state for like a while and get some work done. And speaking of the body, I also think I really like the concept of BPT, the biological peak time. And there's real truth to that. If you're working in a team, you'll really begin to notice how some of us are kind of sleepy in the mornings, and some of us are kind of sleepy around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, while others may be really energized and they're ready to go, like running around. And so just really observe objectively what your biological peak time is. At what time of the day are you most physically energized, so that you have the strength and the stamina to attend to your work and to get things done.
So there are a number of ways in which all of the things that we're speaking about need to be personalized for the person in question. So for instance, if you're a person who has a chronotype, so if your sleep and waking rhythm is that you get up very early in the morning, then typically you'll experience biological peak time in the morning. And for people who have a more afternoon or night oriented chronotype, so sleep and waking rhythm, they tend to be more active towards the afternoon and early evening. So that's a way in which you can indeed, based on your personal type, organize your works to make it so that you're the most effective given your energy levels throughout the day. And in relation to that, of course, also just basic maintenance of your own physical body, as you said, Nomali. So getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, drinking sufficient water, and eating healthily and things like that can also allow you to maintain a stable energy level, or as stable as possible energy level throughout the day, which can help you to work more effectively and therefore manage your time more efficiently.
And I would also say discover what personal habits, personal practices that are really valuable, that sort of increases your sense of work-life balance, and sort of managing that time in a way that really is uplifting and aiding in sort of keeping that energy up. So for example, for me, I have a sort of an intermittent fasting schedule that I often am in, and I often notice that when I'm fasting, it's really helpful for me somehow to like get things done when I'm in a fasted state. Sometimes you can also maybe think about just really sort of treating your body well, like whether it's taking a shower or like a hot shower or a cold shower is sometimes really amazing to like get yourself really energized and you're like ready to go after a cold shower. It's just almost unfailingly effective. The other thing also, and then after that, after this, maybe we can jump into another quadrant, is just being realistic. I think, setting realistic goals about work, but also because this is around body and behavior, this quadrant, it governs how we work. And how we manage our time, being realistic about our lives and where we are at. In other words, just our body is probably not the same as when you were 18 years old to where you might be now. So just kind of noticing how as we age, that biological peak time is probably changing as well. And maybe that's another consideration here as well. Just noticing just our progression in life in general, in the ways that our bodies are changing.
Well, excellent, Nomali. And one of the things that you said previously also relates to the lower right quadrant. So we can move now to the lower right quadrant of the collective exterior, so the its dimension of society and environment. And you were speaking about minimizing distractions and, for instance, turning off your email and turning off mobile phone notifications and things like that. And that's one of the ways in which we can create an environment, so create conditions which are conducive to effective time management, so using our time efficiently and getting things done. And if we think about an environment that we work in, then for many people throughout the pandemic, for instance, that has been at home. And if we then think about distractions, that can also include other people around us. So one of the ways we can also, of course, manage our environment skillfully is by going to a room where we can be alone, closing the door and informing the other people who are with us in the house, for instance, our spouse perhaps, or our children, that we need to be alone and focused for a while, so we do not wish to be disturbed, so that we can enter into a potential flow state, as you were mentioning before, where we are completely absorbed in the work that we're doing for a period of time, which makes working very pleasant.
Yeah, that just reminded me of something. Can't remember where I learned to do that, but when you're working in a group, so the lower right is perhaps involving other people, other sort of spaces, and kind of it might be even sort of a co-working space, how you work in your office. This is where that lower right comes into play sometimes. And you have to abide by certain systems and structures that are in place. And I remember there was when you wanted to like really get your work done, we had a system where you could actually have a little thing around your neck and it said "in silence." So when somebody's going around the office wearing this "in silence" tag, you're in community still, you're within the system and the structures, but you communicate to others. Please, I'm in a distraction-free zone right now on my own. So I just remembered that. And of course, you get that in meditation centers, for example, if you go to meditation retreats and such. Some people will actually have a little "I'm in silence" tag on them, so that even during talking aloud times, you're still requesting to be respected in your silence. So anyway, yeah. So this lower right is really, again, it's around creating systems and kind of observing patterns. That's a good place to start. What are some patterns that I always notice when I get stressed out around managing time? So what kind of a little system can I create around this is the time that I'm going to be attending to emails, or this is the time that I'm going to be attending to my research? And using these days, I'm just mentioning technology because that's how we work. I mean, I think most of us are working in that way, and not everybody, obviously. But we can make use of certain great productivity tools that are out there. There are certain apps that can help us track progress, track time, even track energy. So Yeah, just kind of using devices, even things like social media, in a wise and helpful way rather than letting it sort of overwhelm you. So that could also mean just like cleaning up your desk space, cleaning up your phone, like getting rid of apps you don't want. It's all very interconnected somehow. So to sort of see these interobjective patterns and connections in how we work, how things create patterns or break patterns. So and sort of taking it even a little bit further, perhaps not so much to do with patterns, but we can also optimize how our space feels like for us. So creating an environment that is designed for managing your time well. So, for example, I heard one teacher who was talking about how he can't enter his office unless he jumps over his meditation cushion. So it's almost like you set cues and you create a space that is conducive to managing your time in a way that is good for you. Making it beautiful. If aesthetics are important for you, making your space look like the way that that you want it to look like. Perhaps you buy yourself flowers occasionally, and so that there's a beautiful fragrance in your room. Perhaps you hang charts and graphs and things that are helpful for you in your work. Listening to music that is helpful to you, that is energizing or calming, whatever way that the environment comes alive for you in such a way that time is something that we can be friends with rather than be afraid of it. So
that indeed brings us to the lower left quadrant of the collective interior, or the we dimension of relationships and culture. Because one of the things that is also pertinent to time management is being able to separate the tasks that we ourselves need to do and tasks that other people could perhaps better do. So there's also a way in which delegating tasks can be very beneficial. Asking for support can be very beneficial. And basically just knowing what our role is and what the roles of other people are. So one of the ways I think about the time management across the quadrants is that the upper left is about why. So why do we want to do something? The upper right is about what are we going to do? The lower right is about how. So how are we going to do it? How do we make it possible to do it? And the lower left is about who. So who will do what? And so being clear about the division of tasks, for instance, and we can then communicate that via the lower right. So basically by sending emails or by expressing verbally what our needs are and how we want to approach a particular project, for instance. But that requires us being clear about the way we wish to relate to others in the lower left quadrant regarding the goals that we have set for ourselves within the time management theme that we're discussing now.
Yeah. Just want to add to the lower right, I think having a system among a group of people, such as just sharing each other's calendars, so that we're connected in that way to see, how can we optimize each other's time and the use of time. Yeah, exactly. And so in the lower left, it's all about sort of how do we create a culture of respect and culture of valuing each other's time in a way and assisting each other, supporting each other to do that. And so something that I think comes up to my mind is just being willing to be, authentic and being willing to say yes or no in an effective way, whatever is appropriate, so that there is honesty between each other, being willing to ask for help when you need it. And that's a thing that a lot of people worry about for all kinds of cultural belief systems, that asking for help makes us feel or look weak. And that kind of ideas are, I think we need to just put aside, really be vulnerable in a sense in those times of sheer overwhelm. People really do struggle with time management. I sometimes think it's probably worse in the US where I live than certain other places that I've lived in. And sometimes I think that has to do with this sense of lower left and a sort of a lack of trust in others and a lack of that sense of we and community, that we're here for each other. You're not on your own. This is such a sort of an individualist culture that you have to just sort of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just go, 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 go. Just to sort of take an alternative view to that, you know, people are here to help us. And when we need help, we can ask for that. And we can invite others to ask help as well. So to really set a tone and a culture of shared burdens and trust and valuing our sense of time, delegating whenever it's possible, and being honest about responsibility and accountability, holding each other to our word. Yeah, let's maybe move a little bit. Let's return. I think maybe you might have mentioned a little bit around the upper left, but let's kind of spend a little bit more time around the upper left. This is around kind of really feeling consciously into your purpose. What is your inner intention, your inner mission, your inner purpose, and your inner vision, even around why you're trying to accomplish something or task and why it's important to manage your time. I think this is where you can really take into account what really matters in this task that you're trying to accomplish, within what context. We can really think about resistance, like, you know, why do we sometimes resist working? In some ways, is even the lack of managing time. So always feeling busy, always feeling or always saying yes to everything and taking on more than you can handle. Is all of it a certain kind of a coping mechanism that is perhaps coming from shadow and even trauma? It's easier in a way for us to fall into the trap of not managing time because, in a really strange way, that's what keeps us safe, maybe. That if we keep going, just keep doing, then we never have to be quiet and really reflect on who we are and what are we doing. Because if we actually become quiet and we spend a moment of not doing anything, things that we don't think about or feel into come to the surface. And so that can create a new insight. Just sort of noticing resistance and our ways of thinking about time management, even our ways of feeling into time management, can give us good insight around our kind of personal relationship to what we're trying to accomplish. Really articulate the why, the sort of the inner why of what you're trying to accomplish. And I think time management becomes a lot easier and sustainable when we can actually articulate the inner meaning and purpose of what we're trying to accomplish and why accomplishing it really matters.
Indeed. So that's basically our survey of the quadrants in relation to time management, where we had in the upper left individual interior I dimension, we had indeed purpose. In the upper right individual exterior dimension, the it dimension, we had action. And in the lower right collective exterior dimension of the its, so of society and environment, we had creating conditions. And in the lower left quadrant of the collective interior we dimension of relationships and culture, we had support.
Yeah. And of course, we have to take all of this lightly as well, just because it's not as though this is something we have to spend more time trying to put everything into every quadrant. But whenever we step into a task and we're trying to manage anything at all 4 quadrants are at play. They are correlated. And I think the more we pay attention to how all 4 of these perspectives, all 4 of these domains are dancing together, the better our task, and the better our outcomes will be. So I think that's why it's nice to kind of play with the quadrants around these topics. Um, so I also, just for the heck of it, I think we can also just mention a little bit around how do we relate to time and time management through the developmental stages. So just a real simple and kind of a silly way to look at this is maybe even just using spiral dynamics. So along those lines, Lee, how would you look at time management through the stages? So for example, like what would be that survivalist beige stage in us? How would that relate to time management?
Well, that's an excellent question, Nomali. And indeed, as you and I often have discussed, that there's not necessarily a sense of self at the base level of development, or therefore a sense of an individual related to time. But we could say that at beige, we experience time through the experience of our physical body. So, for instance, we experience hunger, and then once we acquire food and we can ingest that food, we experience satiation. So, in that sense, we could say perhaps that time management at beige is related to experiencing physical impulses like hunger and thirst, and then engaging in action. So, dedicating our time to secure food or secure water, so that we can satiate our physical needs. So I would say that's one way to approach time management at the beige level of development. And if we then move up to the purple level of development, then we could say perhaps that one of the things that Jean Gebser describes is that how people at the magical level of development, which would be the purple within spiral dynamics, that they, for instance, engage in drawing an antelope in the sand, or drawing any creature that they're going to hunt in the sand, and then shooting arrows at the creature. And in that sense, we could perhaps say that because later during the actual hunt, they will shoot the animal in question, that basically at the purple level of development, we're approaching time in a non-linear fashion, in which we're shooting an arrow into a sand version of an animal in the expectation that that arrow that we've shot means that we'll successfully shoot the actual animal with an actual arrow later. So we could perhaps say that time management is using time to bridge space and time to secure particular outcomes related to our tribe. That might be one of the ways to approach purple time management.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I would say sort of the red stage is all about me, myself, and I. So I think we can integrate our red selves in a healthy way, into managing our time by really prioritizing yourself unashamedly and unabashedly. Prioritize non-negotiable time for yourself, and you can even reward yourself once you red really loves being uh, gratified, like instant gratification. So if you can actually create non-negotiable time for yourself, no one's gonna eat into this time. This is my time. And when you accomplish your task, you can even reward yourself with a little something that helps you feel gratified instantly. So that's just a kind of my way of looking at maybe integrating red. And then, of course, the blue traditional stage is all about order and structure, and sort of creating a sense of loyalty to what you have to accomplish, and also taking into consideration perhaps who else is waiting on me, or is my community going to be served by this, or whatever I'm going to do, what is its role in larger society or community. So we can become a little inspired in that way to go beyond just my need. And when we can actually remove ourselves a little bit, we can actually give some freedom to our ego that is sort of caught up in this time management and stress and work-life balance and all of that. And just to sort of bring a sense of sacrifice to the other. And then how would it be worthwhile my time to get this done, so that something beyond me, greater than me, is also served, even in a very simple way to kind of think about that. And then also at the blue level is around routine. So creating routines that you do over and over again every day, loyally, faithfully, religiously. And I think there will be a lot of accomplishment actually through that integration of this blue stage.
Mm.
Perhaps you can speak to green and, orange and green maybe?
Yes, well, at Orange, I would say that time management is it is
A
one of the
concept
things that
born out of orange.
exactly.
Yeah.
So our classic time management conception of indeed setting goals, so smart eye goals, so specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound, and inspiring. That is a way that Orange looks at the world as measurable, and therefore we need to divide the goals that we have into measurable sections. We need to allot time to them, and we need to take action, and we need to analyze what the effects of our actions are, and then to adapt and to reiterate if we need to take additional action, and then to evaluate and to make our successful achievement into protocols that other people can follow or that we can follow again in the future. And basically just to approach change in a way that is as scientific and rational as possible. As for green, I would say that one of the things that green, of course, makes us aware of is that the focus on work exclusively to the detriment of all other things is not healthy and not sustainable. So green helps us to apply time management, not just to our work life, but to create work-life balance, where we basically see that our families, for instance, our friends, our other pursuits in life also deserve time, and that we therefore create a more balanced schedule in which both work and pleasure and development and interior reflection and things like that all have their place. So that would be my assessment of orange and green time
Yeah.
management. And how about
Yeah.
yellow and turquoise?
Yeah. Yellow and turquoise. Well, yellow is the kind of the domain of flex flow. So we can actually increase that. So I think that in green, in a certain sense, we are burdened by the amount of tracking and measuring that perhaps need to happen at an orange level. That at green, maybe, as you said, we pay attention to the interior domain and we get a little bit more sensitive to our needs, and that it's okay to take time to rest or do other things. And then at yellow, I think there's just a healthier balance that includes all of what we've thus far talked about. And we can create maps and we can create categories and really map everything out in a way that integrates everything we've talked about in a sense. And then also somehow practice a certain kind of flexibility. Don't worry so much or don't be so religiously attached to the outcomes, to experience life in a little bit more of a true and authentic way, and take into account how all of these other ways of relating to time are integral to how we manage our time. And so we'll have a better sense of knowing what to let go, when to let go, what to keep, and what to work on. And just to kind of have a certain sort of epistemic flexibility around all of that. And with turquoise, I'm sort of thinking with turquoise, I would imagine there's also a sense of just dropping everything and just taking a really broad and deep and wide perspective that includes way beyond just my little job that I'm trying to accomplish, and to really take a universal, bigger picture of why what I'm trying to accomplish really matters, and in what way can I relate this to a sort of a universal sense of accomplishment and contribution and sense of time and space. So
That's nice. And then I would say for the coral and higher levels that basically we relate to time more as time flowing through us, and time manifesting as space-time, basically. So the dance of emptiness expressing itself as form, and that we're basically an actor all of us are acting parts in this theatre of reality, and perhaps even further, as you were describing, a sense of surrender to the cosmocentric perspective of seeing ourselves as expressions of time also.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, and when it comes to types, I think we can simply look at our personality type and just see what do we need, what are our gifts and skills and our drawbacks, our limitations that are somehow a part of us, a part of our personality, and they go back a long way. So we can really learn how to leverage our personality and serve sort of really kind of contribute towards the needs of our personality in that way. So I'm a type 4, you're a type 1, and we can really think about what that means as far as managing time is. And like I said earlier, I get stuck in the upper left a lot, and that's very much an Enneagram 4 way of just kind of simmering in the feeling domain without moving into action. I'm sort of can be very doing deprived, ineffective in the doing domain. So it's really important for me to sort of be aware of that. And anything else that you might like to add around types?
I indeed resonate most profoundly with type 1 in the Enneagram personality type system. And that comes, of course, with a large number of challenges. But one of the benefits is indeed being naturally rooted in time. And I've noticed, and we've spoken about this previously also, is that type 1s tend to respond to challenges with competency behavior. So they tend to do things and they tend to want to respond with action. And one of the things that is therefore good for me to be aware of is that sometimes when I'm working with clients who do not naturally gravitate as easily as I personally do to time management and getting things done, is to also be aware of those personality type differences and to allow the space for people to indeed have their individual preferences and the individual orientations towards time, and to see that in many other aspects of life that other types have natural benefits, and to see that each of us has an orientation as a personality type that comes with some benefits and some challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And just to take it all the way out even to lines of development, I think this is something that Jeff and I used to talk about when we used to run the Integral Incubator, is around, so if you're working on a task or a project, it almost always requires multiple activities or multiple strategies and multiple ways of attending to that work. So even if it's a small project, you can actually just take a moment, take 10 minutes to just see what different lines or what different areas of work needs to happen here. Financial maybe, and or communication, energy, whatever, like different things that you might need to get your task accomplished. And just to see, where do I need help? Where do I really excel at? Okay, I have the cognitive capacity maybe to get this work done, but perhaps I'm not very good interpersonally asking for help. So we can kind of look at that in that way. So the cognitive line, emotional line, psychosomatic line, I really don't take breaks very much once I get going, and that always gets me in trouble. So you can see I need to pay more attention to this sort of the psychosomatic line of development in relation to this task. Need to remember, set a little timer to remind myself to take a break. Or when it comes to this task involves doing taxes, and how good am I at that? In my case, I'm never good at doing taxes. It's always so complicated in this country. So just kind of getting a little snapshot of like, what are the different intelligences and what different areas that I need to pay attention to. And so that's just a simple way of looking at lines in relation to time management. I think we've already talked a little bit about the sort of the states when we were talking about the quadrants, because that sort of state of undistracted focus, creating that kind of state, creating a state in your environment that is uplifting to you, those kinds of things. I think perhaps we already mentioned it within the quadrants, but is there anything that you might want to say? We also spoke about flow states, for example, getting into flow states. Yeah.
I would add, indeed, you also already alluded to this, but I would add that certain reactive states, so states in which you experience shadow projections and then become, for instance, annoyed or frustrated or very lethargic in response to goals that you want to achieve. And for instance, I think you mentioned that your perspective on time management can also feel constrictive. So for instance, some people, and I would think this goes, for instance, for people who identify as type 4s, is that it can feel very constrictive to even think about scheduling things and to create a fixed schedule where you're allotting time weekly, for instance, to do a particular thing. And that can also be part shadow, where you're interpreting a schedule as something that is constraining, where you could also interpret it, for instance, as something that is liberating, because you're creating a system that allows you to express yourself on a regular basis in the way that you want to manifest yourself most profoundly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's anything creating an optimal state, that is really conducive to accomplishing those tasks. There's just so many different and wonderful ways to do that, really. So I mean, I was just actually just noticing, this is like, we're talking close to Christmas, and I just noticed, I put like just a simple strand of Christmas lights just brings so much, it just changes my state. And so it just brings a little joy every time I sit here, and when I'm talking with somebody, or when I'm just walking around here and I just see a little bit of the little Christmas light delight. It's just so sweet. So yeah, there's just a lot we can do around optimizing our state, around how we approach this whole concept of time management. Yeah, and I mean, I would also say this isn't, to feel burdened. Like, we just took us kind of a journey around the whole kind of the aqua map, the quadrants, levels, line, states, types, around this topic of time management. And it can all sound a little overwhelming, but I think that's not our intention. I think our intention really is just to see that there's so many different and multiple perspectives we can take on time management, with the intention of honoring the complexity that is behind time management for 8 other types other than type 1s.
Well,
That's
I
like
must
billions of people.
I must
Yeah.
say type 8s are also extremely good at time management.
They are, yes, they are. And I think type 3s as well,
Oh
Yeah, type 3s. So yeah, these are gifts of some of us, but then some others of us really struggle in many ways. And when you look at it in an integral way, of sort of outside of the normal societal expectation that you should just get your thing done, when we look at it in an integral way, we can see why each of us are different, and really honor and be compassionate towards ourselves and others around how we relate to time management. It's not just a simple stick it in your calendar, go get it done. It's just never as simple as that. So, except for type 1.
Well, no, and I think that's a fair point, is that if we look at it from a zoomed out perspective, so if we look at it more from a cosmocentric perspective, then the orientation of getting things done in the upper right quadrant, that's not necessarily the best way to live. I mean, it's just one way that is very much appreciated in the society that we currently live in. So in that sense, people who are good at time management have a certain advantage. But a very good point that you're making is that the emphasis on time management within our current society and culture is not necessarily an objective evaluation of its merit.
Beautifully said. Yeah, very well said. Yeah, very good. All right, well, this was fun, Lee. Yeah.
Yes, and excellent time management, Nomali, because you went through everything exactly within the time that we'd allotted. So
yes, exactly. Good. Yeah, and perhaps we will be back with other topics, and we'll explore other areas of our lives through the integral map.
Certainly.
Okay.
Thanks for watching, everyone.
All right.